Imagine if whatever you did in college or university or high school impacted the rest of your career. In the real world, that would never work because all of the qualifications that you obtain. But that's just how it is in the wild world of the NBA. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to How the Draft Position Impacts an NBA Player's Career. But let's first define what the NBA draft even is. The annual National Basketball Association draft provides a basis for all 30 professional franchises to acquire collegiate talent for their rosters. It consists of 2 rounds of 30 selections each, or an average of 2 selections per team per draft. The draft order is set in the inverse order of the 30 teams' records after the end of the regular season, allowing weaker teams the opportunity to draft the more talented college players. Of course, the most desired pick is the number 1 pick, as you can choose any collegiate talent for your team. The biggest hopes of the team lay upon that player. But do all these players contribute to their team long term? Let's look at the longevity of all number 1 picks in the past 20 years of the NBA. Now, take a look at this graph of the career years by number 1 picks. If you look at it, you notice 2 heavy outliers. The 2007 first pick and the 2014 first pick. If you look at the player drafted first in 2007, Greg Oden, he played just 3 seasons, but that's a technicality. While being drafted in 2007, he finished his career in the 2013 and 2014 seasons, as he didn't play for 4 years due to injury. In the span of his career, Greg played 105 games while contributing 7.3 wins to his team and having a player efficiency rating of 18.7. I will explain what win shares are later in the video. The only reason why I'm telling you this right now is because I want to compare him to Anthony Bennett, the 2013 first pick. He ended up playing until 2017 and played a 151 games total. In these games, he contributed 0.5 wins to his team while playing on a 10.2 player efficiency rating. In his rookie season, he even managed to get a negative win share rating, which means the team would have been more successful if he simply wasn't on the floor. Now, let's see how much your draft position impacts your longevity in the NBA. You would think the first pick would have the longest careers, right? Wrong, as they only take the 4th spot, with 8.48 average years spent in the NBA. Above it are the 5th picks with 8.57, the 4th picks with 8.81, and the longest careers belong to the 7th picks, with 9.04 years on average. This stat is in fact quite surprising, as if you look at the 7th pick history, there are only 4 All-Stars in the last 20 years. Luol Deng, Steph Curry, Lauri Markkanen, and the Antichrist himself, Julius Randle. Which is contrary to the first picks who have had 14 All-Stars in the last 20 years. This indicates that teams are less likely to gamble on a high ceiling at pick number 7 and are more likely to choose players who are more likely to be solid contributors as role players for the years to come. Also, if you look at the 2nd pick being rather low, that can be explained by teams deciding, since they've not gotten the 1st pick, they might as well gamble at the 2nd and choose a player with high potential but also a high bust chance. Also, another huge outlier is the 6th pick. That is because there have been some truly horrible selections at pick number 6. In the last 20 years, we've had some standout bad players, like Yi Jianlian, who ended up playing only 5 seasons, Johnny Flynn, the man selected right before Steph Curry, who ended up playing only 3, and same goes for Jan Vesely, who ended up playing only 3 as well. Also, there's the case of Brandon Roy, who only played 6 seasons, but ended up having short-term success, even becoming an NBA All-Star. But in the end, his severe injury problems cut his career short. Also, I might have to add that there have not been many All-Stars at pick number 6, one being Brandon Roy, and the other one being an actor famous for Space Jam 2, Damian Lillard. Another interesting fact is that players drafted 59th have had the shortest careers. In fact, you are more likely to never play a single game in the NBA if you're drafted 59th, while having a higher chance if you're the last one on the board. From the 17 59th picks that have been chosen since 2004, only 7 have played, and no one has played more than 2 seasons. The 60th pick, on average, is much better, despite having just as many people who have never played. That is due to some outliers, like Isaiah Thomas or Sam Merrill. Another interesting fact is that the highest player drafted to never play in the NBA has been Fran Vasquez, drafted 11th by the Orlando Magic in 2005. Funny enough, once upon a time in 2000, his future draft pick, who turned out to be him, was traded for future NBA Hall of Famer Tracy McGrady. But longevity doesn't matter if you're just running around on the court doing cardio like Tony Snell. So let's look at a statistic that actually showcases how many wins a player contributes to their team. Win shares. I will now show you the formula on the screen, because I'm not literate enough to read that out loud. Now that all the geeks have been satisfied, let me just put it in words. Win shares indicate how many wins a player has added to a team just by his individual performance. Well, let's look at the players first who've had the most and the least win shares in league history. The player with the most win shares is legendary point guard and the owner of the worst Google AI overview of his nickname, Chris Paul, with 215.1 wins added. The worst player according to win shares in the past 20 years has been Josh Jackson, the 4th pick in the 2017 NBA draft. Also, he's a known bad man. Another interesting thing to mention is that number 2 and number 3 in the worst win shares in the last 20 years have both been in the 2006 draft. The number 2 spot belongs to Mardy Collins, the 29th pick, who has had a win share record of -1.6, which is no wonder, as he has been drafted by the New York Knicks. The other man with the lowest win shares is the number 3 pick, and also coincidentally, the number 3 on our list, Adam Morrison, drafted number 3 in the same draft, who've ended up having a win share record of -1.4. But let's look at the singular picks. Third picks have the highest average win shares, with 44.5 wins added. First picks are second place, with 41.7, and fourth picks take the third spot, with 37.9. Our longevity leaders, the number 7th picks, take only the 4th spot, with 31.8. You can also see that the number 2 picks only have an average win share number of 30.8 wins added, which also confirms my hypothesis that the number 2 picks are often a gamble. They might have high ceilings, but also have a high bust potential. Also, if you look at the 8th picks, you might notice, oh lord, they have been bad, which is true, because they have virtually no standouts in the ranks. The only outliers in terms of win shares are 2006, where Rudy Gay went 8, and 2013, where the 8th pick was the man with the most championships in the 2020s, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Also, let's look at some other outliers. If you look at the second round, you might see 2 unusually high stats, the 41st pick and the 45th pick. While both being draft picks in their 40s, they tell very different stories why they are outliers. With the 41st pick in the 2014 NBA Draft, Denver Nuggets selected Nikola Jokic. At that time, that pick was so irrelevant that they played a Taco Bell commercial over it. Nowadays, Nikola Jokic is a three-time MVP and has led the Denver Nuggets to the NBA championship, teaching teams the true value of a low-rounder pick. The 45th pick, however, tells a story of multiple individuals who have been well above average, but has no particular superstar. The three players who are outliers in this category are Lou Williams, who has added 65.7 win shares after being drafted in 2005, Goran Dragic, who has added 56.7 while being drafted in 2008, and 2014, the Dallas Mavericks drafted Dwight Powell, who has added 47.9 win shares over the years. And if we come back to the yet so cursed 59th pick, you can see that the win shares are exactly 0.0, because all the players who have actually played in the NBA perfectly match each other's win shares, some in the negatives, some in the positives, which also statistically means that if no 59th pick would have ever played a game, the score in all the NBA seasons since 2004 would have remained exactly the same. So, to conclude my research, I can safely say that being the first pick is no guarantee that you will be the best or the longest lasting. They managed to not win a single category based on averages, but still, if you look at the trend in both graphs, you can see that it does matter how high you're picked, even though there are some outliers in the later rounds. But after all, it still shows. The NBA draft contains the lottery in two ways. The lottery to determine who gets the first pick, and the lottery if you choose the next Nikola Jokic or not. And as my closing statement, I want to give you one piece of advice for your future. Never become the 59th pick.